Hello and welcome. Why are people still struggling to get back to a normal life 1 year after the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico? And what, if anything, has changed when it comes to regulating the oil industry? For 87 days, oil spewed from British Petroleum's Deepwater Horizon rig following an explosion that took 11 lives. The millions of barrels of crude oil that were released not only damaged the ecosystem, but the lives of people who depended on the surrounding waters for their fishing and tourism industry. It's estimated that more than 4 million barrels of crude oil gushed into the sea. Nearly 2 million gallons of toxic dispersants were used to break up the oil before it reached land. The US federal government declared that the spill violated laws and harmed natural resources, including 950 miles of shoreline. It also led to the deaths of thousands of animals and continues to, as more dead wildlife washes ashore, believed to be victim to the chemicals in the water. 1 year later, the Gulf Coast is still trying to recover as battles over compensation continue, and a rise in illnesses in the area raises concerns of local people. So today we ask, what's the reality of the situation in the Gulf Coast and what precautions have been taken to stop a repeat of the incident? The phone lines will open in a little while, but for now you can join the discussion with your questions and comments via email and text messaging. Joining me on the show now is Dr. Mike Robichaux, a Louisiana physician who's been treating patients suffering from mystery illnesses believed to be caused by the effects of the oil spill, and Cherri Foytlin, a woman who walked from New Orleans to Washington to highlight the suffering of victims of the disaster. I'll get to both of them shortly, but first, my conversation with prominent ecologist and co-founder and president of Blue Ocean Institute, Dr. Carl Safina, who in his latest book, A Sea in Flames, The Deepwater Horizon Oil Blowout, looks back at the events surrounding the oil spill. I began by asking him what he hoped to achieve by writing this book.
Oh, well, with the book, I hoped to just really encapsulate between the covers of one book both the factual and the emotional topography of the issue. Because although a lot of what caused the blowout were actual judgments that were made and things that actually happened, a lot of the response to the blowout was emotional. And in some ways, that was the worst part of it, people not knowing what was going to happen to them. And then the third part of the book is a little bit of perspective setting once the oil stopped flowing, once we had some idea of the parameters of the whole problem. So it's a three-part book: how it happened, what was going on while it was flowing, and a little bit of hindsight.
And of course, you know, when you say looking at the hindsight aspect of it, a lot of people are saying that nothing really has changed as far as regulations and the way the government is looking at drilling. What lessons have been learned that have been applied from what you can tell?
I think that some of the procedures for getting drilling permits and for drilling are tightened up. The Minerals Management Service was broken up to provide better oversight and less internal conflict between the parts of it that are supposed to encourage exploration for oil and the parts that are supposed to make sure that it's done safely. So inherently it had a go fast and go slow conflict, and that's been broken apart so that the conflict is not really inherent in one agency anymore. But there are a lot of things, I think, where we missed the chance to learn our lessons. The damage cap for oil companies is still only $75 million, even though, as we saw with this blowout, the damages can be in the tens of billions. And the blowout preventer, we have learned recently, seems to have a fundamental design flaw because the force of the blowout itself appears to have bent the pipe enough to make the blowout preventer unable to shear the pipe. So I think that we've learned a lot more lessons than we are applying, unfortunately. It's
interesting your perspective that actually it's less of a concern the oil we spill, more the oil we burn. So ultimately, is there a realistic perspective on this spill?
Well, I think there are a variety of realistic perspectives. You know, I think that the oil seems to be more of a problem, I would say, right now than I thought it was a month or two ago, because we're starting to see hundreds of newborn dolphins washing up dead, and we're starting to realize that apparently hundreds of people, possibly more, are suffering chronic illnesses that they first acquired during heavy exposure to the oil and the fumes and things like that. But I also did want to set the bigger picture, which is if we take the oil and we burn it, that's not just okay. We tend to be very alarmed at the oil that we spill because we can see the mess that it makes. But in the longer term, from each separate oil spill, the oil dissipates, dissolves, and becomes essentially disarmed over time. Whereas when we burn oil and gas and coal, the carbon dioxide actually concentrates. It doesn't dissipate, it concentrates, and it is changing the heat balance of the Earth, the pH of the ocean, making the ocean more acidic. It is changing the distribution of fish and other animals. It's creating sea level rise, which is beginning to displace people in coastal cities and may displace millions. So that's really a global catastrophe, whereas these acute catastrophes of the oil that we can clearly see are the only ones that tend to really get our attention.
The other thing is the spill did highlight the loss of the Mississippi Delta, and actually that's a long-term thing. That's been something that's been going on for quite a while. I wonder really, you know, once the cameras are away from the scene, so to speak, a year on, of course, it's just an anniversary. It's not covered the way it was a year ago. I wonder if really anything is being done to address the kind of long-term issues, such as the Mississippi Delta loss.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. I would say that that's a little bit better than it was a year ago in terms of attention paid to it. The situation was, a lot of people thought the oil was going to kill the Mississippi Delta, and those vast, vast marshes are one of the main reasons that the Gulf Coast produces more seafood than any other part of the country except for Alaska. It's an incredibly productive area, largely because of those amazing marshes, which people thought the oil would destroy. But for the last 40 years, those marshes have been eroding and dissolving because of 10,000 miles of channels that have been cut into the marshes to service the oil rigs, and the upstream flood control and water control that has been applied. Normally, the Mississippi River, the mouth meanders and wanders around over time, and the mud and sediment is what build and maintain the marshes. Now that's all been fixed in one spot. The mud and sediment is shot straight out one channel. All the canals and other channels erode from the banks. They're a red carpet for hurricanes to just come whipping through. And you can easily see on topographic maps, just from the 1970s to today, how those wetlands have lost about 25% of their area. It's a tremendous, tremendous loss. You can go there with a camera, and with a moderately experienced guide, he can point out to you where the forests have been killed that used to be these cypress swamps, where that has turned to salt marsh, and where what was salt marsh has turned to just open water and the marsh is gone. It may be that the money that will be collected from the BP fiasco will be applied partially to restoration of the water processes that maintain the marsh. That would be a positive thing, and there's more attention on that now than there was a year ago. Well,
Dr. Safina, I want to put a couple of emails to you. I'll put these back to back. The first one's a comment from Mela Macedo, who wrote into our Facebook page, and Mela says, similar to Japan, the US and BP are hiding the extent of the environmental devastation in the Gulf. The human health problems aren't a concern for the government and this irresponsible company. Well, I'll follow up with another email that came in from South Africa, if I may, from Cape Town, where Cameron Peter wrote in. And Cameron says, the direct remedial costs can be accounted for, but the long-term costs of the spill will be picked up by the taxpayer and future generations. Why can't BP set up a trust to manage future remediation efforts? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know why they could or couldn't. That's the first I've heard of a suggestion like that, which I think is interesting. But I think much more fundamentally, the problem is that we have an economy that allows companies to privatize profits and socialize all the risk. So, and that's what I was talking about initially, that the damage cap is still only $75 million, which is nothing compared to the amount of almost infinite amount of damage that can be potentially caused in the short and long term by these events. Whenever you have concentrated energy sources like deep oil fields or nuclear power, you have concentrated risks. And the economy, the way that the economic policies are set up, you still have the incentives for the companies to engage in risky behavior to try to boost profits in the short term, because they can pocket the profits and the long-term risks are shared by everyone and they're not really held responsible. So this is a fundamental problem. By diversifying energy sources and decentralizing them, if we had solar and wind and geothermal and tidal energy all around the nation and all around the world, all around our economies, driving our economies, these decentralized sources of energy would be far less risk prone. Right. And that would be the way to go.
Just another email, actually, if I may, that came in on a similar topic, but also touches on the medical aspects you covered just a moment ago. But Saman Zishan wrote in saying, BP should sponsor health initiatives that reach out to people in the area. Also, medical research needs to be sponsored in order to assess the outcomes more carefully so that another future devastation is minimized. And of course, that is a concern, isn't it, that, as you had mentioned, the long-term potential chronic illnesses.
Yes, very much so. And while I don't want to excuse BP for anything, a lot of reckless behavior by them, by Transocean, and by Halliburton caused this blowout. Reckless behavior caused this blowout. And I don't want to excuse them for anything, but BP did provide quite a lot of money to allow people to go to mental health clinics during the height of the disaster last summer. I think we need much more. We need it much more for the long term. I am disappointed that it seems that the government is not really scaling up its testing of people who are complaining of chronic problems. I would like to see a lot more along those lines, and I would like to see specifically the companies responsible pay for all of it and more.
That was Dr. Carl Safina speaking with me earlier. Now over to my guest in New Orleans, Dr. Mike Robichaux, a ears, nose and throat specialist in Louisiana, who's seeing a trend of ailments in his patients, especially those who've worked in the Gulf of Mexico since the spill. And here in the studio is Cherri Foytlin, a mother of 6 who marched on March the 13th, left New Orleans on foot to begin the 34-day, 1,200-mile walk to Washington to raise awareness of what's been happening to the people of the Gulf as a result of the spill. Now, our phone lines are open, so please call in if you have questions and comments. And, of course, we'll take your emails too. Now, I want to welcome you both to the show. And, Cherri, I want to start with you.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations. A few days to recover, I hope, from that 1,200-mile walk.
Yeah, I've had a few days, but it's been going, because I've been with meeting people here in D.C. and.
Of course. And that's the thing. You wanted to raise awareness to what's happening to the people in your town, your region. How much did you notice people paying attention because of what you're doing?
Well, on an individual level, people all the way up said that they understood what was going on, and people would come out and walk with me, which was incredible. You know, you're around a bend and you have a whole family worth of people that are ill or that have been affected economically that want to come walk with you. It was very encouraging. On a local level, for local media, they were great in getting the word out. So, and then when I got here, we had Power Shift going on with 10,000 college students, and they were very bright and knew what was going on. So.
Of course, a year has passed now. I wonder how much the interest in the story overall has changed, though. Of course, once the TV cameras go, people tend to forget about things. What have you noticed as far as that in your area?
Well, definitely the media is gone, but more importantly, BP is actually pulling out their cleanup workers. And so I'm still seeing a lot of oil and tar mats coming in on a daily basis, as well as devastated wildlife that have passed on the shores. And the number of ill people, according to Louisiana Environmental Action Network, is in the thousands at this point because our workers were not allowed to wear respirators, which, by the way, had been bought for them beforehand by a number of NGOs, and they weren't allowed to wear them, and so now they're suffering.
Well, that's perfect cue to bring in Dr. Mike Robichaux, who's here with us as well. Sir, good to have you join us too. And I want to ask about the illnesses you've seen, because I gather these are very different from others you've experienced in your medical career.
Yes, it's been absolutely remarkable. I graduated from medical school in 1971. I've been in practice in '75, and I've never seen anything like this ever before. I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor, but I do a lot of general. My interest is really in a broader span of medicine, and so I practice ENT, but with a great deal of emphasis on other issues. And there's nothing like this that I've ever seen. It's been absolutely amazing. And
it's interesting, sir, because you also have lived in the area 65 years. And I gather, you know, oil drilling, of course, has been going on for a long time, for decades, and well before the spill, of course. And this, you're saying oil has never been as much of a problem as what's been happening now, and I gather it's the dispersants.
Well, exactly. What's happened is that for years, we probably had every year as much oil hit Grand Isle, for example, the only habited barrier island in the state, as hit with the storm, hit with the spill. However, we've never had problems with this. We had oil on the beaches. We'd have brown swimsuits after we came out from playing on Grand Isle, which I played on as a child all of my youth. But what happened, Mother Nature took care of this. And in this particular situation, BP, arrogant corporation that they are, decided that they were going to come in and hide the oil from us, and so they sprayed dispersants on it. Dispersants sank up to the bottom of the Gulf floor, and now this stuff is going to be there for generations, and it will literally destroy our future of our shrimp, crabs, oyster fisheries, and so forth over here. So we're going to have thousands and thousands of people without a way to make a livelihood, and also we're going to have thousands and thousands of people impacted severely with health issues.
I'm going to bring Cherri in back here and ask you to answer a question, if I may, that came in from a viewer by the name of Fazli Samir, who wrote in saying, how can we be sure that the long-term effects of such disasters will not cause havoc in the future? And I wonder that you remember the Exxon Valdez spill. Of course, you no doubt have studied other spills and so on. That was in 1989, and the impact lingered on long after the leak was dealt with. And I wonder, through stories like that one, how you've been able to map out how your region might be affected from what happened to you.
I have to say, the people of Exxon Valdez, the survivors, came in very early on and told us what to expect. But one of my main issues is, at this point, that they did health studies like they're trying to do right now on us, long-term health studies in Exxon Valdez, but they refuse to open those so that we can see what's going to happen. It's frustrating to us that they're going to repeat the same studies that they've done before, and that we don't have any real health care in a large portion on the ground right now for the people that are suffering from symptoms.
We've got California on the line. Grant's with us on the phone. Grant, what would you like to ask?
Yes, thank you for having me. What do you and your guests think of the influence of lobbyists on Washington that prevents prosecution of corporations like BP, Oceana, and Halliburton? Okay. And if there isn't prosecution, won't these same laws be broken again? I'm
going to get back to Cherri for this one too, because I'll tie it to an email we got from a viewer by the name of Greg Manahan, who asks a similar thing about long-term impact and accountability. Regrettably, he says, the United States is not known for self-seeking when it comes to big business. The truth about the long-term effects of this disaster and many other pollution cases in America will never see the light of day. And I wonder, Cherri, if you believe BP will be held accountable more than it has been up to now.
Probably not in my opinion. I asked to speak with BP, and I gave them a wonderful opportunity to come out for the people of the Gulf Coast and to make themselves open and to listen to their concerns, and I was unable to do that in any way, shape, or form. And in my opinion, which means nothing, you know, we've tried on many occasions to get the government and to BP to come to our table and to listen to our concerns. As a matter of fact, on April 20th, the memorial, tomorrow, in Tipitina's in the Quarter, we have a large amount of sick people that are going to be there. I think Dr. Mike's going to be there. And we're going to be able to speak with the media, speak with politicians who care. And I sent that out to every representative, every senator, the President of the United States, local and state government, and we'll see who comes. Right. You know, but up to this point, there's been very low turnout.
Well, let's get Dr. Mike Robichaux's perspective on this, sir, and I'm going to put it in the form of 2 emails back to back on a similar thing that we got in. The first one from Deb Nunn, who wrote in saying, what could possibly restore what they have destroyed forever? There should be criminal charges. There should have been criminal charges. The other one that came in from Kenya, from a viewer by the name of Abidze, says, things may look normal, but the effects will be felt for years. Will BP be there to take the blame? And I wonder, sir, also how you feel about the issue of accountability here.
Well, the issue of accountability is that there's no accountability. Because we have a European audience, I'd like to just make the following comment, and that is that if BP went into France or Spain or Germany or any of the European countries and poisoned thousands and thousands of people and destroyed their coastline, they would go to war. There's no question that there would be a war over this. And if not a war, something very close to it, especially if BP refused to take care of the people that they destroyed. Now we've done nothing on that front, and I don't anticipate that we will, because be it Republican or Democrat, and by the way, I support the president wholeheartedly, but he's fallen far short on this issue, and he needs to get his act together.
I should point out, by the way, to our viewers that we did ask BP to come on, but they declined, so we didn't have them able to answer some of the charges, of course. But Cherri, I would like to ask you about the fact that BP did say at the time it would deal with, quote, every legitimate claim. and it's paid out something like $10 billion when the cap, as Dr. Sarafina also mentioned, it was 75 million. So 10 billion it's a lot more. Now, you know, there are questions about whether or not it's been fully dispersed to the people who need it and so on, but surely it's a sign that BP is trying to do something.
Well, I would like to think that too, but unfortunately we are seeing a large amount of people that are not getting the help they need, whether it be economically or medically. I mean, I would love to be able to say that BP is doing the right thing. If they had, I wouldn't have had a need to walk 1,200 miles. I would have stayed at home with my kids. I mean, that's the truth of it is. But as far as I know, and I've talked to Ken Feinberg on a number of occasions, and again, asked him to come to our table and to take into account Dr. Mike and other doctors and scientists, their findings into this, and they have refused to do that in any way, shape, or form. So if they had done that, then I would be able to believe that to be true.
Have you got any sense of what role the U.S. oil lobby has played in all of this?
I do not, except to say, you know, they're protecting the bottom line. That's as far as I know.
Dr. Mike Robichaux, if I could ask you, sir, to what degree do you feel that so many people have been caught up in obviously the spill, the consequences of the spill, and the sort of the need to point fingers and to blame, that sometimes people forget to focus on what needs to be done next, as opposed to find people responsible for this?
Well, you have to understand Cajun culture, and I live right in the epicenter of the largest economic corridor with regard to petroleum products in the United States. I'm at the apex of a triangle at the head of at the middle of Bayou Lafourche, and so I've gotten to see these things over the years. These people are absolutely not concerned about us. They have no concern whatsoever. The Europeans just cannot. The European press is down here in force. American press, other than Al Jazeera and the Huffington Post, have not covered these things at all. They've refused to cover any of the human impacts with this. And they have put thousands of people, they've made thousands of people ill, and put hundreds that I know of personally into the hospital and so forth, and they have not covered their medical costs, and they've not given them any compensation. It is absolutely unbelievable. It is not even at third world levels.
So,
okay.
Yeah, sir, I'll get back to the, if I can, to the media thing in a moment. But let me ask you, Dr. Robichaux, if do you think there's any danger of the food chain being severely contaminated?
Absolutely, absolutely. They are still spraying the dispersants. As far as we know, the dispersants that have made my patients ill are still being sprayed and injected beneath the water where we can't see them. We've have numerous anecdotal accounts of the spraying still going on, and so
right.
you know, it's still happening.
Cherri, just about a minute to go, and I want to get to this issue that Dr. Mike raised about the media not being around anymore, and the European media being there, but the American media. Why do you think that is? I mean, you've had to go to the media through this walk, and it's a hell of a walk you've done. Why do you think the media hasn't come to you to the same degree?
Honestly, it's corporate media. The same banks that own BP own the media, and also there's so much other things that are going on out in the world, But I think that this is an important story. We are talking about the poisoning of close to 11,000 people in the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm not talking about just the workers. We have 3-year-olds with 10 times the ethylbenzene level. That's benzene carcinogens breaking down in their system. These children cannot breathe. This is not a joke. My walk up here was a rescue mission for my people and the people that I care about, and nothing else.
Well, Cherri, I want to thank you very much, and Dr. Mike, thank you also for joining us there from New Orleans too.
My pleasure.
All right.
By the way, I hope.
Go ahead, sir.
I hope you realize that Cherri made this trip barefoot.
Yeah.
The reason she went barefoot is because Cajun girls don't have shoes. So it's just a natural thing for her to do that.
Well, I want to congratulate you both on your efforts. Thank you very much. And I want to thank our viewers also for being with us. You can follow the program on Twitter. We'll keep you notified on upcoming shows and send questions and comments to pose to our guests. On the next show, the end of an era, revolutionary icon Fidel Castro steps down after 50 years as Cuba moves towards an economic and political shakeup. But is the socialist revolution over or just adapting to new realities? Tune in for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.